So I think the most exciting thing about Wilds conceptually, assuming this is indeed an open world game, is that this is a studio and specifically a team that's been craving an opportunity to do something like this. 20 years ago, when they started Monster Hunter, there were obvious limitations technically. They would have a beautiful map with as much ecology as they could fit, but even the zones were too big for the hardware to handle and you needed lots of loading screens. Not only were they limited by technology, but also funds and an overall nicheness to their game. Since they couldn't have guaranteed a great market for Monster Hunter games, that probably impacted their decisions on how big they could be or how much they've invested into each game. But now that they're in the mainstream, as evidenced by the fact that they had the prime slot for the biggest reveal at the biggest game show of the year, with a trailer that was actually quite subtle, which isn't what you would expect from the prime reveal. You would expect explosions, lots of attention-grabbing things, kind of like a fireworks to end the show. Now, with the PC as their primary standard, supposedly, all the ideas they've cooked up for 2 decades, all the dreams they've had all the way back then, this game looks to be their big chance at creating the real Monster Hunter they've always wanted to make. One of these ideas appears to be much more elaborate and intense monster introductions. Most people seem to think the smoke clouds and thunder were just environmental hazards happening randomly. While that could be the case, I think it's a monster that the hunter is running away from in the trailer. I suspect, again due to limitations in the past, Capcom held back from all these really cool ideas they had. But, with nothing holding them back now, in an open world Monster Hunter game, why wouldn't finding a Kushala de Aura accompany a great giant tornado? Or a giant thunderstorm be what enshrouds an Amatsu at all times? Amatsu might be a little weird since we just killed one at the end of Sunbreak, but you get my point. I think in open world games, and even Souls-likes, monster/enemy introductions or environmental accompaniments have been less explored than I think they should be. There were a couple cool boss introductions in Elden Ring, like Lasena Sax. The potential for an environmental shift to be a part of a monster is enormous, especially as part of actual gameplay and not just a cutscene pre-rendered. If you can imagine fire setting everything ablaze around a Teostra as it casually walks through the plains. Just putting my mind into what Capcom is thinking, like all the cool things that they probably thought of doing that they never really could do because of the limitations, they're not there anymore. It would also seem it could expand other monster traits like this to a bigger scale. Valhazak has always sucked the life out of monsters nearby, but so imagine him just doing that, but just a lot more monsters and it being a lot more chaotic. Others have noted the hunter is carrying at least 2 weapons on his mount. This could be either a partial camp where you can switch loadouts on the mount, or instead of a switch skills type of thing, it could be a switch weapons. If you're Capcom, you have to think on how to expand the combat without breaking what's been established throughout Monster Hunter. Rise and Sunbreak was divisive for some because it bent the rules of weapons and the way of combat a lot. Some favoring the faster fights and others going back to World as we see now because they missed the slower hunts and the slower hunters. There could be so many different ways of implementing a system like this, many of them probably bad. Do you get a switch evade like with the switch skills would be a question for sure. Can your demon mode in Dual Blades charge your switch axe? Probably not. Would you keep your demon mode if you switch weapons? Probably. Can you glaive into the air and use Greatsword on your way down, switching mid-air? Maybe. We can safely assume that they want to expand combat, perhaps not by much, not nearly as much as Rise, but somehow. Plus, we know that Capcom more than likely wants to balance out disparities in weapon usage. Instead of layering weapons that are already pretty balanced and layered more to make each weapon deeper, they could simply add a system that allows for 2 weapons at once, where you can switch, to help nudge players further into trying out different weapons. Either way, I think the fanbase is actually pretty excited about either concept of having or bringing multiple weapons on a hunt. I think people are really excited about that. Some people were wondering how the camp system would work if we had an open world Monster Hunter game. Some people are thinking that we're just going to run around everywhere. I think there's a very small chance of something like that happening. What I imagine it'll probably be like is that you have a main base, a big town or village, maybe even a couple of them, depending on the scale of this game, and you're helping to build them throughout the story. Kind of like Astera, Yukumo, or whatever village we've had in the past. But on the map itself, you have bonfires, or like in other Monster Hunter maps, you have small camps set throughout the world. You can wyvern ride around as well. But probably on your mount, you can bring another loadout, maybe 2 other loadouts, and over the course of the game, you'll probably get new mounts. If we're really thinking no limitations here, you could probably choose to bring a big mount, which is slow but could carry a lot more loadouts and items, or trade off for a quick mount that can bring very little but can traverse the environments better. That idea is a little wonky. I don't see them really implementing that because that inconveniences the player too much. So you'd probably just upgrade your mount. That's probably pretty quick over the course of the game. And yeah, over the course of the game, you just upgrade it, and that allows you to bring more slots and items. You know, I'm not totally sure what they would do. I think as much as the team for Monster Hunter loves exploring and creating this world for us, they would absolutely love to have multiple styles of mounts with different trade-offs and vastly different locomotive styles. But that may inconvenience the player way too much than they're willing to attempt to do, so it's hard to say for sure. Anyhow, it was a minute trailer, and it was pretty awesome to have that spot at the end of the Game Awards. People could speculate endlessly about it. I'm not sure that's what I want to do exactly. But truthfully, I really can't wait to see what the modders could and probably will do with this game. You know, unless a certain company gets their way.